What's going on, guys? It's Tom with Verus Engineering, and today we're going to be going over the front splitter install for your GR Corolla. All right, so with the addition of our front splitter, we're looking to improve front end downforce and ultimately increase grip, as well as smooth the airflow out from underneath the car. And I mean, a pretty good side effect is that the car will look better, in my opinion. Hopefully yours too, since you've already bought it. So let's get into the install.
All right, guys, so as part of the kit, you're going to receive 2 halves of the air dam, a splitter blade assembly, 2 brackets, left and right, and a hardware kit. So tools needed to install the splitter kit: you're going to need a utility knife, flathead screwdriver or panel popper or both, Phillips head screwdriver, a screw gun, and a drill, or just a drill, whichever you prefer, a 10mm socket, 12mm socket, center punch, 3/8 drill bit, 1/8 inch drill bit, or a small starter bit. You'll need a 4mm Allen key or socket, 5mm Allen key or socket, this is a 14mm, but a 9/16 wrench, 7/16 wrench, 3/8 wrench, 10mm wrench, 11mm wrench, and that's it.
All right, so before we get into the fun stuff, we have some prep work we need to do. We need to remove the front bumper so that we can install our splitter rods down the line. But in order to do that, we need to remove this radiator shroud up here. We've got a number of clips. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clips. We just need to pop out with a flathead screwdriver, which I've thought I already did. So once you pop these out, this cover will just remove up like that. So with that radiator shroud removed, we need to remove a number of bolts and clips that basically attach this center section of the bumper to the headlight and various other components. So we've got a 10mm bolt here. We have a Phillips head style clip, Phillips head screw, and then a 10mm bolt here in the center, and the rest of the hardware on the other side of the car is a mirror of this. So go ahead and remove that, and then we will have to get underneath the car and remove some other fasteners. Also, one last thing before we put the car or are able to remove the bumper, we need to remove 2 clips or just one, whatever you want to do. Basically this guy here or this guy here, and that will remove or detach the air horn or air duct. Okay, next step, as with most modern bumpers these days, we need to remove a number of clips across this wheel arch section here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically once all of these are removed, that will free up this section. Go ahead and do the other opposite side, if you will. And then we need to get under the car and remove a couple of bolts for the forward section of the wheel liner and the splash guards. All right, next we need to remove 3 screws. 1, 2, 3, along this kind of corner section of the bumper that holds the forward section of the wheel liner to the splash guard and the bumper, all that stuff. Then we need to remove the forward splash guard and then the rear or engine cover or engine under panel. This is 10mm screws across the front, 10mm bolts kind of right here in the middle that sandwich the two together, and then the rest of it are going to be clips that you can remove with like a flat tip screwdriver or a clip removal tool along the sides. We've got 2 on each side. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the rear of the engine under panel, and then we have 1 holding this wheel liner to the this kind of like extra shield thing that's going on right here on both sides. All right, this exposes the undersection that we need to. All right, so now we're ready to remove the bumper. With all the hardware removed off of the top and the bottom, we just have a couple things to note. Basically, these are held in by those plastic kind of claws. So you're gonna wanna like kind of pull up a little bit and then out towards you. There's one kind of retainer in here that will need to pop before you get it out. And then up here on the headlight, there is kind of like a retaining claw right here on the painted surface, and then on the black bracket surface or finished here. And then that's mirrored on the other side as well. So you just want to pop these guys up, release them before you go yanking on it a bunch, and then release the sides, and you can go ahead and remove the bumper. One last thing, you also make sure you disconnect your fog light connectors and the connector going to the front sonar sensor, radar sensor up front. All right, so with the splash guards out of the way, we need to mount our main splitter brackets. And they're gonna take these two 12mm head bolts that basically bolt the lower radiator support to the rest of the car. Do one side at a time. If you do both at a time, the radiator will fall out of the car. So, again, we're taking these two bolts here. Bracket's gonna be oriented just like this triangle shape kind of facing outwards. So let's get to it. And you probably saw there the radiator support dropping down. That's basically why you just want to do one side at a time. Square the bracket up. Tighten it down. Want to torque these bolts to approximately 20 foot-pounds, and we're good to go. And of course, your brackets will be powder coated beautifully. All right, so we've got the bumper cover off. First thing we want to do is remove the styrofoam piece for the crash bar. We will need to clearance this later, so don't let it go too far away. Set that aside. Now we need to drill for the splitter support rods and the installation of the clevis. I have already marked it out. But what you want to do is take a tape measure, take it off the edge of the crash bar, and we're going to measure 15¼ inches inboard, which should be right around here. Make a mark. And now on this lower rib, if you want to call it that, we're going to center our mark in terms of height, center punch it, and we're going to drill this to 3/8 of an inch so that we can install a rivet nut. Okay, you can see this a little better now. Again, we're measuring 15½ inches from here to here. And then we want to measure about halfway up this lower rib right here, which I believe was about like 11½ millimeters. Whatever that, I don't know what that conversion is in inches. So we're going to take this, and I already have it, but I'll do it again to show you. Going to center punch our mark. If you want, start with an 1/8 inch pilot hole. Drill it to 3/8. There we go. We've got our hole. Now we need to install the rivet nut. Okay, so we need to install a rivet nut. Okay, we have two of these M6 heavy duty rivet nuts installed in the kit as well as these installer tools. What you want to do is thread the rivet nut on like I have here. Insert the rivet nut into the hole like so. Then we want to hold back the black hex portion while we tighten the 5mm Allen portion. Initially, you'll get some pretty good resistance as the rivet nut begins to crush, and while it's crushing through its range, it'll kind of the resistance will let up a little bit until it picks up pretty violently at the end. It'll get really tight, and that's how you know you're done installing the rivet nut. Once it gets really tight, back the 5mm Allen bolt out, and you have a fully installed rivet nut. You can also buy a tool like this on Amazon if you wish. That is also a perfectly installed rivet nut. Okay, so you're gonna want to repeat the process for this side as well, or whichever side is the opposite, so that you have two rivet nuts installed. And then the next step, as you can hopefully see, maybe you can see over here, is we're gonna install the clevis. And to do that, we're gonna take two of the pre-drilled clevises in the hardware kit. You'll notice there are no threads in the middle here. And we're going to insert our 20 millimeter low profile socketed cap screw, you can tell because they're low profile. We're going to slide it down through the top of the clevis, like so. And then we are going to install this into the rivet nut. These should be clocked slightly kind of inboard like this, basically going from the headlight to the center line of the car. Just a hair. Try to hold them back as you tighten them. Once you have them lined up, torque them to 6 foot-pounds. If you need to, you know, go ahead and toss the bumper back on for a minute and just compare if you hold the splitter up to the bottom of the car where the race upgrade goes. All right, so go ahead and grab your splitter support rods. Assemble them just like this. There's a right and a left-hand thread, so make sure you're putting it in the right way. If it's not going in, obviously it's the wrong side. Just so you don't have to take the bumper on and off a bunch of times, I found that about 11 1/8 inch from center to center on either eyelet is basically where you need to be to have this thing adjusted at the right length. So we're going to bolt these into the clevis using our 25 millimeter button head cap screws, 12 millimeter OD washers, and we're going to use a serrated flange nut on the other side, and we're just going to bolt through the clevis just like this. If you want, you could torque them to 6 foot-pounds now. I recommend waiting until you get the bumper on the car and the splitter on the car, and then going ahead and torquing them. That way you can move these around. Ultimately, the choice is up to you. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave these loose. We're gonna go and get the bumper back on, and I'll show you guys which hole in the grill that these need to be fished through. All right, one last thing before we put the bumper on. Actually, the styrofoam piece I said we had to deal with later on. We're gonna need the notch around the clevises. So I've done one side, but basically line this up with the dowels and then just kind of make some marks, and you'll use a utility knife or something like that and just cut the styrofoam out, just like that. All right, so here you can see where the splitter support rods come through the grill. So we'll leave this kind of up, or you can pause it real quick just so you can get a count. It's, you know, it's the third one over and one up from here. But yeah, here's a shot of that for reference. So normally, excuse my reach, we have one of these guys in this tab, as well as the rearmost tab in the bumper. We're gonna remove the OEM plastic thing. In both of those areas, we're gonna install the supplied M6 fold-over nut, just like we have here. You're gonna just basically slide this onto the tab. Now, we also have a third mounting location that we need to modify, and that is back in this area here. We need to install a rivet nut, a plastic rivet nut that looks like this, not to be confused with the heavy-duty rivet nuts that we installed in the crash bar for the splitter support rods. We're going to install these rivet nuts in the same manner. If you want, just rewind back to that segment to get a refresher on how to install this. But again, rivet nut here, fold over nut, and fold over nut. All right, so here's a close-up of one of the fold nuts, the second fold nut, and the installed rivet nut here. All right, so we have to get the under panels back on the car. I've already put up the engine under panel by just the clips because the bolt sections are underneath the splash guard for the front. When we put the splash guard back up, I guess technically, if you really wanted, you could leave it off. But it is highly recommended that we put it back on. In order to put it back on, we are going to need to trim the sides to clear our splitter mounting brackets. And so what I'm going to do is cut it just along this line right on the edge, just to make things nice and simple. All right, so we got to get this under panel back on the car. I've already got the engine under panel already on here with just the clips because the bolts are basically shared with this panel. We need to clearance this panel in order to clear the splitter mounting brackets. So basically, you're going to want to do something like that. This material is pretty easy to cut. If you just score it with a utility knife and then snap it off, it will cooperate pretty nicely. So let's go ahead and put this up. Okay. We got the splash guard back up and the engine under panel back up. So we're ready to put the splitter on.
All right, so we've got the air dam installed on the splitter. All these nuts are loose. They do need to be tightened enough so that they don't like just spin freely, but they're pretty close to the air dam. We've got a nice movement here so that when we get the splitter installed onto the car, we're able to push up that air dam against the bumper. We've now installed the rubber sheet seal as well, so that basically protects the bumper from getting damaged by the sheet metal air dam. If you have issues with the rubber seal coming off, we recommend using a little bit of black RTV. I'm going to guess on the edges, so I'm going to put a little bit of dab of black RTV on each edge, then push it down and let that RTV dry. That's going to keep the seal in place. If you have other spots that it does that, by all means use a little bit more RTV, but it does a pretty good job of getting on that sheet metal as is. But again, some people have issues. Now another pro tip on how to get this air dam to actually stay in place. Once you get this on car, you're going to push this against the bumper, and then we recommend using like an impact driver. Don't go crazy with it, but that allows that serration to grab into the air dam initially, and then you can actually use an Allen wrench from there to tighten it to 6 foot-pounds. You'll know that the Allen bolt and the nut are actually tightening when you go by hand, because the nut will continue, or the bolt will continue to get harder to tighten. If it doesn't and it just continues to spin, then those serrations are not into the air dam. I'd recommend going back to the impact, trying to get that serration to catch, and then once again go back to the hand, tightening it to about 6 foot-pounds. Hope that helps clarify any questions you guys have during install.
All right, it's time. Put the splitter up on the car. We are going to start with the 3 bolts for the main splitter bracket. Use your 1.5 OD fender washers and 25mm buttonhead cap screws. If you have a friend to help you with this, probably the best scenario, honestly. All right, so one quick note, the 4 bolts across the back, we're going to be using hardware from the hardware kit, not the OEM bolts. So we're going to take the 70mm buttonhead cap screws and the 1.5-inch diameter fender washers, as well as 2 15mm nylon spacers and 1 10mm spacer. And we're basically going to put the bolt through with the spacers above the splitter. Just like so. Once you have them started, or have that one started, go ahead and start the rest of them. We don't want to tighten anything down. You can go a couple threads in, but we're going to tighten everything after we have all the bolts all started. All right, next we are going to take our 25mm buttonhead cap screws and 1.5 inch fender washers, and we're going to attach our race upgrade or the splitter reinforcement bracket up to the front. we're going to take 2 clevises, one on each side. And we're going to start those bolts. Make sure you line up the splitter rods as you're doing this. I've already done this side. Once you have the splitter rods lined up, you can torque them down to 6 foot-pounds, and then we'll go through the adjustment for the splitter rods, or the final adjustment, at the very end. Okay, so the final 3 bolts on either side, we're going to be utilizing spacers as well. And so, need to get on my step stool here. The arrangement will be for the rearmost bolt, closest to the wheel well, we're going to use a 45 millimeter M6 button head cap screw with, of course, our fender washer, which obviously is used for every single bolt here. We're going to use a 15 millimeter spacer and a 5 millimeter spacer. And then this guy here, moving forward towards the front of the car, we're going to use a 70 millimeter button head cap screw, 2 15 millimeter spacers, and we're good there. And this inboard bolt, we're going to use a 45 millimeter button head cap screw, and we're going to use, what did I put in here? 2 10 millimeter nylon spacers. So we got 45 millimeter button head cap screw, 45 millimeter button head cap screw, 70 millimeter button head cap screw, and then we have 2 10 millimeter spacers, 2 15 millimeter spacers, and a 15 millimeter spacer and a 5 millimeter spacer. All right, last but not least, we need to put our bolts through the splitter clevises so that we can attach the tie rods or the support rods to them. We're going to use 25 millimeter button head cap screws with the 12 millimeter OD washers. Slide them through that way. And then we're going to use an M6 serrated flange nut on the other end. We're going to torque these to 6 foot-pounds, both rods that is. And then we want to make sure we have our support rods adjusted properly. Basically just make sure you adjust them so that the splitter is parallel with the ground and there's no kind of wonkiness or waviness going with it. You don't want to pull it up too far. You don't want to push it down too far. So once you have that done, take your wrench, and 11 millimeter wrench, and make sure you tighten up your jam nuts. Just like so. You've completed the install. We got the bumper bolted up. We have the clevises adjusted, or clevises tightened, splitter rods adjusted. Bumper's obviously back on the car. And it goes without saying that you'll need to replace all the parts on the car or put all the parts back that need to be put back, including like this guy here. So go ahead and reassemble the car in the reverse order. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up the install for the front splitter on your GR86. Today we installed the front splitter and the air dam with the race upgrade. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, be sure to email us at sales@verus-engineering.com. And until next time, we'll see you later.